Hello my friends and welcome back. It is Wednesday, the middle of the week, so happy Wednesday to you. We almost survived this week, but you know what didn't survive this week? You're right, the two Russian TU-95 bombers. Two TU-95 bombers were damaged after the Ukrainian drone attack to the Russian airbase of Engels in Saratov region. So this is Russian soil attacked by Ukrainian drones, and two of Russia's, you could almost say, most valuable aircraft were damaged. According to sources, the attack took place on the morning of December 5th. Now, it's not newsworthy in a way that it's happened, pretty much a week ago, but the thing is, satellite photos of before and after the attack were just published, and it's quite rare when you get an attack against TU-95s with confirmed satellite damage. Satellite image that confirms damage, that's what I wanted to say. So that's why I'm reporting on it. It's big enough of a news, it's a bombshell of a news. An unidentified drone crashed onto the runway of the Engels 1 airbase. As a result, two TU-95 bomber missile carriers were damaged, two servicemen were injured and hospitalized. Satellite images of the airbase in Engels before and after the drone attack have been published. There was another attack on the airbase today. Well, that's actually yesterday, because the satellite imagery came out yesterday. According to the local governor, there was no damage. Ukraine has attacked this airbase several times. And this is December 4th, one day before the drone attack. We see many juicy, beautiful Russian planes parked on the tarmac, or you call it tarmac, right? Yeah. And this is the December 6th, one day after, and we can see fire trucks at the possible explosion site, TU-95 bomber with traces of fire extinguishing foam, Engels 2 airbase, Engels 1 it's supposed to be. It's a sight I like to see, Russian missile and bomb carriers covered with fire extinguisher foam. Also, there is a satellite photo of a lot of smoke coming out of this airbase, so it's a nice thing to wake up to. If you want to see it even more up close, boom. Here it is. All of the links are in the description below, so you can go and have fun, check it out yourself. If you thought I'm done with Ukraine attacking Russian soil with unknown bombing capabilities, you're wrong, because this next news, it's not unknown bombing capabilities, it's very much known. Check it out. Ukraine used the new Peklo cruise missile drones to strike Russia for the first time. First of all, Peklo, it sounds very Finnish, Peklo. Could be Finnish, but it's Ukrainian. 6 missiles successfully struck the oil depot out of 10 launched, which have reported range of 700 kilometers at 700 kilometers per hour cruising speeds. I wonder if the Ukrainian development team is like, we gotta make the numbers match. 700 kilometers per hour cruising speed, very fast, so we gotta hit the range of 700 kilometers because it just sounds good. Of course, you can see these drone missiles in a video here. And when I say drone missiles, it's not a mistake. They are drones/cruise missiles. One of the very first of its kind, and Ukraine came out with the announcement a few months ago. Well, here we can see them in a video. And now first confirmed attack in the Transnistria oil depot in Bryansk, resulting in this beautiful lit up sky. Christmas is coming, my friends. This is the time to devote to your family and friends. Well, you are my friends, and so is Exter. I already mentioned they are one of the very first sponsorships I ever did, so I feel a special gratitude for Exter. Also, they do have an insanely great wallet I use. Last time I showed you this fashionable Parliament wallet, but this time let's go with something more tactical. All black aluminium card holder. Of course, you can choose between 14 different colors on this one. It is compact, but still holds up to 12 cards plus cash. By the way, this wallet also blocks RFID and wireless theft. With this card holder, I will do my Christmas shopping in style and safety. They also send me this Finder card, and I never had anything like it before. It is a revolution in item tracking. Finder card is an ultra-slim rechargeable tracking device that will make your belongings impossible to lose. It's credit card sized and trackable globally with the Apple Find My app. Just use your phone to ring your stuff. or see where you last had it on the map. By the way, my friends, I just got this from Exeter. It's a slim and silent key case. It fits all my keys, and I have some chips also to get into the apartment. And I can never lose it because it has a key tracker that I can work with Geopolitical app on my phone. Grab your Exeter wallet now for Exeter's Christmas sale of up to 50% off and use my code Artur at checkout to enjoy further savings. Thank you, Exeter, for once again sponsoring this channel. But now, my friends, news takes us to my country, Estonia, where currently the United States, or I gotta be more precise, the Dutch F-35s, bought from the United States. The Dutch F-35s were scrambled 2 times to escort our Russian fighter bombers away from the Estonian airspace. First of all, it's great news, and I'm glad to be reporting that we have F-35 stationed in Estonia as we speak. It's a wonderful knowledge to have. And secondly, I'm glad to see that they scrambled even for the slightest disturbance. I mean, the Russian fighter bomber didn't even enter their space yet when they were already being scrambled because the fighter bomber was flying towards Estonian airspace, did not react to the communication efforts, did not have the responders switched on. So I'm glad to have a very swift reaction from a coalition NATO aircraft guarding Estonian airspace. 2 of the Dutch F-35 aircraft, also known as Lightning IIs, scrambled twice from an airbase in Estonia on Friday after the Russian military aircraft were detected approaching NATO airspace without making identification. The first identified Russian aircraft was Antonov 72 transport aircraft, and the other one was an Su-24 MR. And Russia does this periodically to test NATO aircraft scramble speed, responsiveness speed, and I'm glad that our speed is up to speed, if I can say it like that. The response was swift, and I mean, it wasn't Turkey shooting down the Russian planes, but it was swift enough to send a message to Russia that we know when you're coming and we will react within minutes. Talking about NATO aircraft and going on with this topic, Ukraine receives a second batch of F-16 fighter jets from Denmark. And this happened on December 7th. I'm glad to see news like that because for almost 2 years before Ukraine received the first batch, the continuous communication from Russia was that this is a red line. You cross it, there's going to be World War III. And the Western politicians responded with fear, not daring to cross it, not daring to give Ukraine the F-16. Now finally it was given, and now the second batch arrives. There's no reaction from Russia whatsoever. So these red lines were empty, they're still empty, and any future ones from Russia are also empty. Let's choose not to be afraid. Now, my friends, I'll bring you the most recent analysis from Telegraph, the newspaper, news site. And it's a peculiar post because these kind of posts were more common in 2022 when everybody predicted the collapse of Russia, which never happened. And now they do it again. But now the situation is much different. We're almost 3 years of full-scale invasion. And the Telegraph predicts that like Russia's support of Syria, the Syrian regime, it's a card house that could collapse as the Soviet Union's economy did, suddenly and swiftly. Russia's overheated war economy looks very similar to the dysfunctional German war economy of late 1917, which lacked skilled labor and was below the waterline after 3 years of Allied blockade. Putin's strategic victory in Ukraine was far more inevitable 2 weeks ago. It has become less inevitable now that Assad's regime has collapsed like a house of cards, shaking Putin's credibility in the Middle East and Africa. He could do nothing to save his only state ally in the Arab world. Yes, a Russian strength, a military strength, and let's call it what it is, empire strength, can be measured. It is a measuring stick of how their allied states and puppet states are doing. If they're falling one by one, and we'll go into the Syrian topic later in this video, this is an indicator to us, Rostat, the statistics department of Russian government, it's lying. It doesn't give us real information about how Russian economy is doing. We know how they're doing by looking at how their vassal states are doing. Syria collapsed in 11 days. That's the answer. Now Turkey is the master of the region. Turkish troops had to intervene to save the Russian generals. Even if Putin manages to keep his naval base in Tartus, This concession will be made on Turkish terms and patience. Putin is now entering peace talks with Ukraine from a position of weakness. By the way, I'll read you only the most important summaries of that article, so I'll save your time. The revival of the Soviet military-industrial complex is destroying the rest of the economy. About 800,000 young men and most educated people left the country. Many Russians died or were maimed in the war against Ukraine. Total exports earning from all fossil fuels were around $1.2 billion per day in mid-2022. They have been falling for the last 10 months in a row and now are barely 600 million per day. The Kremlin takes some of that for the budget, but it's too little to fund the war machine that eats up 1/10 of the GDP anyway. Putin is raiding the National Welfare Fund to cover the deficit. Its liquid assets fell to a 16-year low of $54 billion. Its gold reserves has fallen from 554 to 279 tons in the past 15 months. The fund was left with illiquid assets. 3 weeks ago, and now this is the bombshell that shook up the image of Russia being able to withstand sanctions. That's the bombshell. 3 weeks ago, the US tightened the noose by imposing sanctions on Gazprom Bank and more than 50 Russian banks linked to global transactions. This made it much more difficult for Russia to trade energy and buy technology on the black market. This briefly collapsed the ruble exchange rate, which now hovers around 100 per dollar. Yeah. An important information again, it went to 110, 113 per dollar. Then Russia started massively dumping its dollar and euro assets, selling them from the National Welfare Fund to prop up the ruble again. These foreign assets, they are running out on a record pace in Russia. Once they do run out, it's just a stone to the bottom of the lake. That's the Russian economy. Putin's regime has not yet reached that point, but it will only take one more shift in the Middle East to bring things to a head. If Saudi Arabia again decides to flood the world with cheap crude oil to regain market share, as many predict, oil will fall below $40 per barrel and Russia will spiral out of economic control and begin to collapse. Again, a lot of posts were made like that in 2022. None of that happened. Situation is vitally different right now. Talking about the measuring sticks of how Russia is doing, as I said, it's their proxy states and their vassal states and perhaps separatist regions funded by Russia. Let's take an example of Transnistria. It's a part of Moldova, but it's a separatist region. It has a border with Moldova and Ukraine. More bad news for Putin. The lights are going out in Russian-occupied part of Moldova. Transnistria has declared an economic emergency due to the potential disruption in Russian gas supplies. Ukraine's unwillingness to renew the contract, allowing Russian gas through the country next year, well, Ukraine put it down its feet. A huge pipeline from Russia to Europe and from Russia to Moldova goes through Ukraine, and it's a Druzhba pipeline. Ukraine closed it. No more gas through Ukraine to Europe and through to Moldova. That means Transnistria is actually facing a gas shortage and has to work with Moldovan government, and they cannot work with Russia anymore on this. The house of cards, which is the Russian Empire, is coming down. Now let's look at this relationship between United States and Ukraine and the outgoing president Joe Biden. Zelensky may have just called last orders on his relationship with Biden in one of the most open assaults on the outgoing president to the date. The thing is, it's a tug of war. US officials have been hinting that they want Ukraine to lower the draft age, the conscription age. Right now, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's 25, so 18 to 24 years old in Ukraine will not be drafted, will not be mobilized. If you're 19, if you're 20, if you're 21, the law right now does not allow the country to mobilize you. You can only join as a volunteer. US wants Kyiv to lower the draft age to 18. That increases the manpower pool by hundreds of thousands, if not over 1 million, to the Ukraine's army, but Zelensky doesn't want to do it. There has even been communications that US aid in the future might be connected to it, that US will fund the weaponizing and training of all these new conscripts if Zelensky lowers the draft age. And Zelensky, in response, says that the US and the West has not delivered the aid that has been promised, and they have not been able to even weaponize all of the currently standing Ukrainian army. Then why would we need extra 500,000 troops if we cannot train them and weaponize them. That is the ongoing tug of war between US and Ukraine. But the United States still announced that they will give a loan of 20 billion USD that will be repaid with proceeds or interests from the frozen Russian assets. This is really ironic. You know, there are hundreds of billions of Russian assets combined in Europe and in the US, which are frozen. According to the Western legislative, the rules-based order of the West, they cannot break this order, meaning they just cannot take that Russian money. Russia still has rights to that money in the West. What they can do is take interests earned from those hundreds of billions, which is still tens of billions of USD, and those interests earned can be the collateral for the loan to be given out to Ukraine. So in this way, Russian assets, you know, making a little circle, still are given to Ukraine. So US gives money as a loan, and they will be paid back because, you know, the interest is being earned from the Russian assets, and these interests are paying it back. It's a lovely system. I love it. This is the West finding a way to make the situation work in the rules-based order, not breaking it. It's beautiful. This was announced by the Treasury Department today. And to the people who say, oh, we should not give US money to Ukraine, what the hell, it's our taxpayer money, then I just cannot note that, it's guaranteed this money will be paid back on date because there are hundreds of billions of Russian assets guaranteeing it. You don't gotta worry. This loan is part of the 50 billion USD commitment by G7 countries. It will be used to sustain energy services, emergency services, and hospitals. And I gotta forward my personal thanks as an Estonian citizen to the US taxpayer who has enabled this. Now we're talking about billions and weaponizing Ukraine and everything, but now I gotta bring you news from the other side of the world, and we go into Russia, and I'm sure you haven't seen anything like it. If you don't know what it is, it might even be beautiful. Well, it definitely is rare. I bring you the Russian shit stalactites, stalagmites. I don't know, you know, the things you find in the caves. Only this is a Russian city of Volgograd, and another pipe burst. This is a regular occurrence in Russia. The Soviet heating and sewage pipes, they burst with the cold because they're like 7 years old, and Putin does not allocate any funding to repair them, and they're filled with shit water, literally. And when they explode, the water comes on the ground, and it's like -20, -10, -15, whatever it is. They freeze, forming these, let's call them beautiful shit towers of Russia. This is a sight. You go to Russia, you want to see a sightseeing, then yeah, you gotta go in the winter, enter a truly gruesome Soviet city like Volgograd, and this is what you will see. By the way, this is not it, because we have this one also. 2-meter pillar of feces grew in a house in Russia. Okay, I'm sorry, I'll go back serious. I'll not waste your time anymore. Yesterday, we got this video from the front. It's not a situation everywhere, and sometimes Ukrainians face the similar situation. These are Russian troops trying to get water by digging a massive hole and trying to get water underground by taking up moist mud and clearing it. Now, the thing is, if it rains, you're fine, right? If it rains and snows, you can just use that water. But if it doesn't, then you gotta do this. Because the fresh water to the front is a massive necessity, and it requires working logistics. And some areas of the Russian front, they don't have that. The Bukanka trucks are killed by Ukrainian drones all the time. They carry water also. So that's what the Russians do. They dig holes and try to get water and clean it and drink it, but that gives you usually diarrhea, bloody diarrhea also, which also immobilizes you as a soldier. So in any way, this is bad, really bad. That concludes the Ukrainian-Russian topic. Now we go to Syria. There's plenty of Russian topics in Syria also. I just want to begin with opening up with this video. Now, I cannot say that this will indicate how things will be in Syria, but we got the video, and I'm just glad to see it. This is a rebel commander. These are former Assad's troops. They're prisoners of war under the rebel forces. The commander says, to them that, go home. You're free to go home. What we saw when other groups took power in the Middle East in the last 15 years, or Arab Springs, we saw a lot of executions and torture and imprisonment for like 10 years. But in this case, they're free to go home. Just one video, isolated event. I'm not claiming that this will be like that, but it's a nice video to see. Now, whatever happened to Assad? We had different information. Maybe his plane was shot down. Maybe he's gone and missing. But now the Kremlin has officially confirmed that Bashar al-Assad and his family have been granted asylum in Russia. Pskov said that the decision was made by Putin. The Kremlin speaker added that the issue of maintaining Russian military bases in Syria has not yet been decided and will be discussed with the future authorities. Well, connected to the topic, remember, even if you are sad, you are not as sad as Bashar. Okay, I'll stop with the dad jokes. I'm not a dad even yet, but I enjoy them already. Going on with serious topics of Russia evacuating their bases in Syria. Ukraine's intelligence service says that Russia is actively retreating its key holdings in Syria. Russian Ilyushin-76 and an Anton of 124 heavy lifters are evacuating Khmeimim airbase, while multiple Russian ships are heading towards Tartus to begin a sea lift. Now here you can see two routes that Russia has away from Syria back home to Russia. One is the maritime route. They gotta take the Mediterranean Sea, then enter the Danish Strait into the Baltic Sea, and then they gotta follow this very narrow path. You might think they can take any kind of path, but no, this white line is actually the only path they can take, because there are Estonian, Latvian, Lithuanian, Swedish and Finnish territorial waters all around it, and this is the designated white line that Russia is officially allowed to use. The red path is the airborne airlift route, which they can take. It's another kind of circle, like a long way in a way, but they have the possibilities to evacuate if they can do it effectively. And to go even in depth of this evacuation, the Russian Navy's Ropucha class Alexander Shabalin, that's the name of the ship, is seen earlier today departing the Baltic region for parts unknown. Well, it's departing for Syria and Tartus naval base to evacuate whatever they can evacuate from there. Even if they evacuate in the next week, it is not enough. I mean, Russia has enough assets. We're talking about, just to name, just to illustrate, we're talking about just massive amounts of ammunition and small arms, 2 BMPs and tanks, mortars, artillery. They have enough of them lying around in Syria that if they don't evacuate for months, they will lose a massive amount of these assets. So if the evacuation lasts a few weeks, then we know that they have lost a massive amount of assets. By the way, a funny story for you that is reported from Khmeimim Air Base. There's an airport with a duty-free shop that was left. So Russians are there, it's a duty-free shop, no shop owner. What are they going to do? Of course, they're going to loot it. A war has broken out in Khmeimim over duty-free shop at the Basil Assad airport terminal. Russian servicemen are firing warning shots at Syrian looters who are trying to storm the abandoned deposits of the perfume and alcohol section. There is, however, a nuance. The military police of the Russian armed forces conducted a raid on duty-free store in advance, sealed everything and requisitioned in order to preserve the property. So the Russian military police wanted to loot the store themselves, and they had to fire warning shots to keep off the Syrian civilian looters. It just illustrates perfectly what happens when the regime collapses. I mean, same in Russia. We saw it in Kursk, actually, when the Russian army pulled back. There were immediate massive lootings of stores in places where Ukrainian army has never been. It was the Russians looting the Russian stores. And here, this is a post from Rehi, one of the most biggest Russian military bloggers, official Ministry of Defense military blogger now. It's just the post illustrates perfectly what the loss, I mean, you see it on the map, what the loss of these two bases, Khmeimim and Tartus in Syria, means for the Russian colonial empire across Africa. These are the countries that Wagner is active in. These are the countries that Russia funnels weapons and funding to, and funnels back diamonds and gold to Russia. If you take away this refueling station and logistical hub of this route from Russia to Africa and back, it's going to be very painful for Russia and a lot more expensive and time-consuming to keep their African holdings. And let's call them what it is. They are Russian colonies. That's how they play in this. It just puts it right in your face, like what it means to lose this. It's a nice map. What is the Ukrainian part in the fall of the Syrian regime? Well, Ukrainian intelligence sent about 20 experienced drone operators and about 150 first-person view drones to the rebel headquarters in Idlib, Syria, 4 to 5 weeks ago. So about 3 weeks before the full-scale rebel counteroffensive began. This is according to the HTS rebel group. So Ukraine simply gave the final push. I mean, 22 drone operators and 150 drones is not enough to take down an entire regime, but it's enough to give a little boom to the card house. And if it's empty inside, if it's a paper tiger, it will fall, and it did. But now we can confirm that Ukrainian drone expertise has been handed over to the rebel groups. They have been trained. Now let's take a little topic called Turkey versus Russia. It's a surprising one. Turkey and Russia have now clashed geopolitically via proxy 3 times in recent years: Libya, Karabakh, and Syria. Karabakh is Armenia, Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan attacked Armenia, knowing that Turkey backs it and knowing that Russia will not back Armenia, although there were promises. And Armenia is part of CSTO, which is like the Russian copycat of NATO. Russia didn't do anything, and Azerbaijan won with the Turkish Bayraktars. Syria, Turkish-backed rebel groups, weaponized by Turkey, funded by Turkey, attacked so boldly and pushed out Russian-backed satellite state, and the whole regime fell. And there was Libya. I mean, Turkey has been playing their cards extremely correctly. Russia is reeling from the fall of Bashar al-Assad and is trying to engage with Syrian new authorities. Assad's ouster in Syria in both geopolitical and status is a defeat for Russia. Geopolitically, the Tartar space is lost, at least for now, which curtails Russian power projections in the Mediterranean and Africa. The thing is, if Russia is able to keep their 1 or 2 bases in Syria, now it comes at a mercy of Turkey, because Turkey funds and weaponizes the rebel groups that holds half of Syria right now. So they have a massive leverage over what happens in Syria. If Russia wants anything to happen in Syria that favors them, they gotta go to Turkey now. So Turkey has a massive leverage over Russia now. This is how the geopolitical power lines have changed. The new leader of the transitioning powers of Syria, a new leader of the rebel group, is the most powerful man in Syria right now, and he's called Yolani. Now, he has massive issues. This is a thread of what might be the future of Syria. Will we see another civil war? What is the new power lines forming there? Yolani is not fully secured the north that's being controlled by the SNA, Turks, and the SDF. He's facing an invasion from Israel, and we'll touch upon that later. Israel has gone fully haywire on that. They have invaded Syria and bombarded 300 military targets in the last 3 days. That is a massive escalation. That is why Yolani is open to potentially cooperating with Iran and Russia. Sounds ironic, but true. He can also continue cooperating with Turkey. He needs weapons to keep Syria intact. Israel is destroying every remnant of the Syrian Air Force. Yolani can't build an Air Force now. But he can do, what he can do is get drones and missiles. These don't require any heavy infrastructure to store and maintain. So Yolani now has to consolidate power. There is a full potential for another civil war in Syria because there are 2 rebel groups that hold 50-50 pretty much of the country, armed and weaponized by Turkey and the United States, which are on paper allies. It's extremely complicated. So they might be rivals if one of these groups decides to get help from Russia or Iran, which both are ready to offer because they need their influence back in the country, so they're searching for new allies. Everything can happen. We don't know. Only time will tell. But as of now, the communication that came out of Syria's new government is they announced plans to adopt a free market model to attract investment and rebuild after 13 years of war, marking a departure from decades of state control. The positive communication, again, like the video of rebel commanders releasing Assad's troops. So let's go into Israel, how they reacted to the fall of Assad's regime in the last 2 weeks. Well, they conducted a full invasion of Syria. Israel has conquered Mount Hermon, the highest mountain in Syria, its peak reaching 2,814 meters. Syria's capital, Damascus, is only 40 kilometers away, now within the range of Israeli artillery shells. Here's why Israel took this mountain. For decades, Israel's northern defenses were overshadowed by Syria's Mount Hermon. No longer. The most important natural fortress in the region is now in the hands of Israel. Israel did it quietly, driving into Syria's abandoned positions and taking them without a fight. And you can see in the photos also, it is just a mountain of rocks, but whoever controls this mountain, highest mountain in Syria, controls a massive area around it with artillery fire, because this mountain, gives you perfect firing positions. And by coincidence, Damascus, the capital, the biggest city in the vicinity, is in the range of 40 kilometers. So owning that mountain with the military is big time, big deal. Check it out. This photo even illustrates it perfectly. This was what Israel controlled before, Mount Meron, Israel. Mount Hermon, Syria, is right here, and Damascus is on the other side, 40 kilometers from this point right here. Now Israeli artillery pieces are on top of that mountain, on top of that pile of rocks, and they can face any direction and they can shoot far and precisely. In the past, Israel's radars have suffered from significant blind spot, unable to see beyond Mount Hermon and parts of Lebanon from their position on Mount Meron, the Israeli side of that mountain chain. Iran's low-flying drones exploited this I'm thinking about the weekend. Weakness, infiltrating Israel time and time again. Once placed on Mount Hermon, Israelis' radars will see far into both Syria and Lebanon, providing early warning of incoming low-flying jets and drones. Israel's military intelligence can also leverage the peak, placing sensors to conduct surveillance and intercept enemy communications. So, it's not only artillery pieces that can fire and precise, it is radars, it is surveillance posts, it is also, they can make it into a logistical staging ground for future incursions into Syria. It's a massive leverage for the Israeli military on the northern border. The mountain also provides the perfect cover for Israel's special forces and spies, who can now enter Syria more freely, conducting missions under the cover of darkness. As the sun rises, Mount Hermon casts a shadow over H Group stronghold in southern Lebanon, dominating the main road to the northern stronghold in the Bekaa Valley. Several of H Group smuggling routes north of the Hermon have been cut off. Now, Israel started a massive bombing campaign as soon as it became clear that Assad's regime is going to fall. So while Yolani gave a communication towards Israel that we're friends, let's begin on a new page, Israel responded extremely aggressively. They're not taking any chances. And the most newest communication from Israel is Netanyahu's threat. Warning to the HTS, I quote, "If the new government in Syria allows Iran to be in Syria and transfers weapons to H Group in Lebanon, that government will have to pay a very high price." So Netanyahu begins with a warning and with a threat to the new government of Syria. Not the best beginning, but that's how they play. And let's for a moment look what is the bombardment mission of Israel and what it really demonstrated to the world, because this was one of the biggest Israeli Air Force activities in the 2-week span ever. And who the hell starts a conversation like that? I just sat down. That is a true meme about the situation, guys. It's a new government, and immediately in the first few days, their entire military infrastructure of the country has been leveled to the ground by Israel. We're talking about 300 military targets destroyed, and an entire air force, every last piece of helicopter, outdated fighter jet, or bomber, or MiGs from the Soviet Union, everything bombarded by Israel in the last week. I'll read you a part of this summary. It's fantastic. The collapse of the Assad regime marks a seismic shift in the Middle East, fundamentally altering the region's political and security landscape. The recent targeted strikes by Israel, reportedly resulting in the destruction of Syria's entire air force in 1 week, adds a new dimension to these changes. If accurate, this operation reflects Israeli commitment to maintaining its security, reinforcing its military superiority in the region. So, here are a few photos also. of the destroyed air force. Most of the assets are very old, almost ancient, but they could fly, some of them. Israel made sure the new Syrian regime or government, whatever you want to call it, will not have an air force in the coming years. They just made sure of that. Everything is destroyed. Every hangar, every repairment facility, everything. So it demonstrated that Israel is not taking any risks. It demonstrated the extreme efficientness of the Israeli Air Force. I mean, it is the powerhouse of air forces of the Middle East. It demonstrated their preciseness, precision, and will. So it's not a good place to start, because Israel could find a very useful ally in Syrian new government, but they decided to go the hard way immediately. Time will tell how the Syrian rebels will respond. My friends, I will keep you up to date on all of these topics: Russia-Ukrainian war, Syria, Israel, United States connected to Ukrainian war, Romania, which has concluded actually, and Georgia. Next video is on Friday, so be sure to be back. Now, my friends, if you have supported the channel on Buy Me a Coffee, I'll be butchering the names now. Get ready. James Sovran, Colin Paulovik, Lord of Tchestak, Brian Bennett, Yuri Blazek, David Regan. I hope David Regan is connected to Ronald Reagan. We have a relative of the previous United States president who brought down the Soviet Union. Hey, glad to see you here, my friend. If you like my channel, become a monthly member of Buy Me a Coffee, get yourself a legendary Rehi patch, and I'll see you on Friday, my friends. Until then, Slava Ukraini, and bye-bye.